Well, for those of you just tuning in, we had a great first part of our morning with a number of speakers that represented national associations, statewide organizations, down to local organizations. So I really appreciate everyone coming out and hope that you're also contributing via our online portal. If you have any written statements that you'd like to submit, those will go into our official record as well. So if you have transcripts or abstracts from your presentation, please pass those along throughout the day. Next, we will have Jesse Mccurry from the Kansas Grain Sorghum Producers Association.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Kansas. We're all glad that you chose to come to the major sorghum producing state. And since you're in the heartbeat of production ag, just want to share as well that the farmer organizations like Kansas Grain Sorghum and Kansas Wheat for that matter are earnestly seeking relevant research and technology to support stewardship and sustainability in the countryside. I'm Jesse Mccurry. I was raised on a beef and grain operation in south central Kansas. My wife Rhonda and I are eagerly raising 4 young ones and trying to teach them about their ancestors' heritage and showing and 4-H and livestock. And when we're not fully chasing kids, I'm honored to represent farmers as executive director of the Kansas Grain Sorghum Commission and Association. Our organization represents Kansas sorghum farmers. We're trying to improve profitability, which is difficult at this particular point in time, not only through advocacy, market development, but education, research, and promotion. We invest in research ourselves through farmer checkoff dollars, and we're the voice of sorghum. Our farmers are active and passionate about their crop. I tried to get a few of them to come here today, but they're quite eager to get harvest wrapped up this year. NIFA has the capacity and ability to reinvigorate the cropping system. Private research and development has invigorated specific cropping tools, but the focus, appropriately so, has been on return on investment. Crops that have a prospective 90 million acre plus market opportunity have been the center foci for crop improvement and new technology. But farmers need diversity. Farmers need cropping system stability, and farmers need workhorse crops like sorghum that would yield rain or shine. Crops that lack that major 90 million acre threshold opportunity have been left behind when it comes to new novel field level advancements. This in turn has left the entire system diversity behind. Sorghum is planted on nearly 6 million acres and has the genetic diversity to be a solution crop for tomorrow's challenges and opportunities. The most promising science opportunities for broader system level impact is transferring crop system advancement technologies to crops like sorghum. Increasing diversity equals increased long-term resiliency and productivity in the farming system. Further, the viability of farming operations into the future generation requires access to relevant technology and weather-hardy crops. Your organization, in partnership with Kansas State University, for example, can strategically fill the cropping advancement gaps left behind by private industry to reinvigorate the ag ecosystem and mitigate challenges caused by monoculture production systems. There are 2 veins of promising scientific opportunities. One is leveraging genomic enabling cropping advancement, and 2 is exploiting natural occurring diversity for unique grain properties and enhanced agronomics. Cropping advancement, as you know, is a numbers and odds game, and we have the opportunity to stack the deck in our favor with integration of genomic enabling tools. With a focused research effort, we can translate sorghum's untapped natural genetic diversity to highly valuable commercial opportunities and agronomic advancements with potential broader outcomes in the closely related maize industry due to comparative genetics. Farmer leaders are eager and willing to partner with emerging research opportunities with their investments and time. Whether it's serving on research advisory boards or establishing new collaborative research platforms, we are wanting to be part of the system and be at the table. In fact, recently, Kansas sorghum farmers joined with Kansas State to establish the Collaborative Sorghum Investment Program, or CSIP, a farmer-driven organization for trying to advance sorghum across the breadth of public and private capacity building. Our farmer-driven sorghum investment stands ready as a prime partnership to further invigorate meaningful research and to provide for translational science with better outcomes. Thanks again for coming to Kansas, the heartbeat of production agriculture, and trying to integrate our messages here into your broader priority and vision. And with that, I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse. Next up, we have H.C. Russell, Jr.
Good morning. My name is H.C. Russell. I'm from Clark, Missouri, and I consider myself a grateful beneficiary of the land-grant university system. I hold a bachelor's degree in agricultural economics from the University of Missouri, and I'm currently employed as an area credit manager for an agricultural cooperative, MFA Incorporated, headquartered in Columbia, Missouri. As an advocate, I'm currently an elected member of the Boone County, Missouri Extension Council. I represent that county extension council on the Northeast Missouri Regional Council. I represent that regional council at the University of Missouri Extension State Council, and have had the privilege in the last few years of serving as University of Missouri Extension's delegate to CARET, the Council for Agriculture Research, Extension, and Teaching, which is a committee of the APLU. And beginning in January, I'll begin serving a 2-year term on the National Executive Committee for the CARET organization. I'm looking forward to that challenge and realize I still have much to learn there. I'm coming today primarily as an advocate that is both a consumer of extension services and both in a personal light and professionally, and hope to participate in a way that makes that organization better and stronger. I'm going to reverse the questions today on our most promising opportunities for advancement of food and science. Again, I'm coming from the non-scientist in the room. As a layman, my thoughts are mostly based on anecdotal observations, interaction I have with other people, trade journals, things that I see within the industry that I work in, and just general interaction. I believe feeding ourselves in the future will require more than food production. While we need to continue to improve food production by volume, efficiency, resource utilization, nutritional value, in all of those ways we can, we've also got to find better ways to make it available. These advancements need to include processing, preserving, storage, logistics, economics from the beginning of production all the way to the consumer. I believe much of the world's hunger could be lessened sooner by better economics and logistics than necessarily our innovations in genetics and production. The most exciting scientific discoveries, I think, are probably coming in the genetics and the production, as many of our presenters have talked about earlier today. But the most efficient impact toward our goal of feeding people, I think, has to include advancements in getting the food where the people are. I'd like to go back to our first question. My top priority for food and agricultural research, extension, and education, and where I hope NIFA can help address those issues. Mine comes back to a very fundamental thing, is to educate people. We need educators on the ground. Capacity funding, sometimes called formula funding, is the bedrock of extension education in the country, where our educators meet those that need our services the most. Application of research-based information is a critical mission of our land-grant universities. Delivery of much of this information is still best accomplished by educational professionals working directly with those in need of the information. The capacity or formula funding provided through NIFA in the Smith-Lever area is critical to the support of the educational professionals and the delivery of the research-based information they have available. Federal funding to land-grant universities has remained almost flat for over 2 decades. Even with low inflation that we've experienced over the last couple of decades, the purchasing power of those funds has diminished by at least 1/3. At the same time, we've had inflation of salaries and other expenses in higher education of bringing those services forward. The result of that is the number of extension specialists in Missouri has fallen from just over 400 in 1968 to roughly 230 heading into 2018. Land-grant universities, both extension and research enterprises, have gotten more efficient during that time and remain very good stewards and multipliers of public resources invested there. However, the long-term decline of investment in public education, extension education, has a negative consequence now and will have for years to come unless we can reverse that trend. A recent study found the University of Missouri Extension's economic impact in the state of Missouri totaled almost $950 million. That impact begins from NIFA's investment of approximately $10 million in the University of Missouri Extension. There are other funding partners, of course. They include state appropriated funds, county appropriated funds, contracts, gifts, fees, making the total budget for the operation of about $84 million. But it all starts with that public investment through NIFA of $10 million. At the risk of being repetitive, I want to run through those numbers again. We start with $10 million of public investment through NIFA, then result in an overall economic impact of almost $950 million in Missouri alone. As our partners in NIFA strive to make the best decisions possible for the allocation of the public resources we're entrusted with, I hope this extraordinary impact is a major factor in the evaluation process. Imagine the difference we can make in the lives of fellow citizens with just a little bit more investment. I look forward to ongoing support of NIFA and from NIFA, and hope to help in any way I can. And for those of our partners there within NIFA, if you know of a way that we can help from the advocacy role outside of the organization, I hope you'll get to us and share that cause and the direction we can go to help you. Thank you. Questions?
Hi, Mr. Russell. Thank you for coming today, and I'm delighted to hear that you're going to be so active in Carrot because we need voices like yours.
Thank you.
And I just want to re-emphasize a point you made, which is, of course, that while we invest in increased productivity, and that is really, really important, we need to feed more people, but we need to think about how's it going to get to them, and is it going to be delivered in a way that will be sustainable and that they will accept, and all of that end of things. And the critical role of extension in there in translating the research. I mean, it's not so often it's like we need to increase productivity. Absolutely. But there's more to the story, and we need to keep telling them more to the story. Again, I'm so glad you're on Carrot because you're one of the many people we need to keep telling that story. We're saying it in DC. We want it to continue to be said at every potential forum around the country. So thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Anything else? Great. Thank you.
Just another quick announcement. If you've joined us during the break and have a PowerPoint to upload, you can speak with Andrew or Aaron in the back. Next up, we have Robert Terry from Oklahoma State University, and he might be representing a couple organizations here today.
Good morning. I am Rob Terry. I'm Department Head of Agricultural Education, Communications, and Leadership at Oklahoma State University. And I come today representing primarily the Experiment Station Committee for Agricultural Education Research. I'm past chair of that group, and I also serve as president of the American Association for Agricultural Education. So my comments today are related to some work and some priorities and concerns that we have from those two latter groups. First of all, I do want to, as other speakers have said, express my appreciation for this opportunity to be heard. Commend NIFA for holding these sessions. Consider it to be very valuable and a great opportunity. So Dr. Qureshi and Dr. Ramaswamy, we really appreciate this opportunity. There is no question that continued advances in areas such as soil health, plant and animal breeding, pest control, nutrition, water management, etc., are critically important to our sustained existence on this planet. However, it's equally critical for us to appreciate the impact of the human interface with food and fiber production. The groups I represent want to impress upon NIFA the need for us to commit resources and effort towards social sciences research. So I have 4 important points I'd like to share with you this morning. First, we must gain a better understanding of what stakeholders for agriculture, so we're talking about everything from policymakers to consumers and all the special interest groups represented within that range, know, or at least think they know, about agriculture. Also, we need to understand what people generally feel, or if you will, perceive about modern agriculture and food production. We're all aware of the misconceptions that exist regarding GMO, for instance, and animal agriculture production. So we need to understand where those perceptions have been developed, how people gain this knowledge that they perceive they have. More importantly, we need to develop educational and communications programs to address those issues and apply the solutions through social organizations such as educational institutions, businesses, agribusinesses, and other forms of business, governments. And let me emphasize here that there are great opportunities now for the public and private sector to work together towards solutions, towards communicating with the public about agriculture, and then other social systems that exist around us. There are tons of opportunities there. Secondly, we recognize the value of multidisciplinary approaches. There is great potential for addressing our grand challenges through collaborative efforts between social scientists specializing in educational communications when they team with bench scientists. Multidisciplinary, multi-state efforts offer this opportunity for synergy to address these complex issues. Opportunities need to be created to promote agricultural faculty working together across departmental lines, across institutions, across state lines to focus on the solutions we face. This needs to happen with faculty through their functions as researchers, certainly, but also as teachers and outreach / extension specialists. Third, we've heard said that one of the best expressions or illustrations of a person's values are how they spend their time and how they spend their money. The same thing can be said of societies at large. Much support for social sciences research to this point has been in the form of, if you will, a tag-on to existing programs. That's a step in the right direction, no question about it. That didn't exist whenever I first got into higher education, so NIFA is to be committed for that. But we would think things need to go a step further, that we need to have more programs that are developed and promoted effectively with faculty in these areas that focus on human capital development, everything from career readiness of young people to work in agricultural careers, as well as what I've talked about before with forming and understanding perceptions about agriculture. Finally, we must have a concerted effort towards developing and delivering programs to increase science-based knowledge about how food and fiber are produced. People need to understand, and we need to address specific issues with our public about how agriculture impacts their human health, our collective economic well-being, our societal sustainability, and that's bringing into the whole issue of food security, energy production, alternative energy specifically, and environmental sustainability. Factors you see also that are inherent with that include important issues that are going to continue to become more and more important, such as water quality, soil properties, maintenance of nature areas, and so forth. So as I wrap up, I'll tell you that we submitted a couple of documents that will be with the materials. We have one, a white paper summarizing opportunities that this Committee for Agricultural Education Research sees. We just put that together recently, working together. And I'll tell you, that committee is made up primarily of my counterparts, department heads from across the country. And then I also uploaded a summary of the research priorities by the American Association of Agricultural Education that we just adopted for the current 5-year period. So we offer those as things that we bring to the table, things that we can offer NIFA, and the kind of programs we feel like we'd like to see emphasized. With that, I'll again thank you for holding this event, and thank you for listening. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Terry, for a very informative presentation. What really interests me from your comments is that, yes, true, NIFA is a very production agriculture skewed agency. That's our center of gravity.
Correct.
However, your point is right on the money. Human dimension has to be an integral part of production agriculture. It's so interesting that when we had our internal listening sessions from our own staff, one of the things which became the top priority or came out to be as top priority was actually human dimension and social sciences aspect.
Great.
Over the last few years, NIFA actually has evolved into not just as a biophysical sciences, but also building subject matter expertise in-house in social sciences as well. So now we have actually on staff PhD level experts in social behavior and economics. In fact, we have a small working group, we call it SBE working group, which actually informs like Peter Johnson and Denise and their staff who are more production and agriculture, that these are the social sciences nexus to what you're doing. So points well made, very cutting edge and very contemporary, and we appreciate you bringing this up.
Well, I want to acknowledge that we do recognize the progress that has been made in the last few years. And this committee I mentioned, we've met in D.C. Twice in the last 5 years, and some of your staff has met with us. We've been over in your building talking to you, to your group, and we have seen progress on that. We just want to make sure that continues to be an important part of emphasis of NIFA programs in the future. So thank you.
So another thank you from me, but also it brought up in my mind real life experience and how what you have shared with us is so true. I'm involved with 2 competitive awards that are working in different regions of the country to help sustain the dairy industry. One is in the southeast and one is in the north central. And the focus of these 2 awards actually was not on research. They were made with the focus on extension. It was called Extension Focused Solutions for Animal Diseases. And the fascinating story that's come out of both of these, they're finishing their 5-year life up now. Fascinating story is that the animal scientists on both teams, as well as the veterinarians on both teams, have had their eyes opened much wider because they included social science
Wonderful.
and social scientists. And so what I hear back, what I've heard over the last couple of years is, wow, we have this good information that we know could help the producers now, while we're looking for the next innovative solution that'll take us further. But guess what? We figured out and found out by working on the ground, interviewing the owners, those who manage the herds, and the workers, finding out there's distinct separation of understanding and interaction between those 3 groups, and how we've had to do this intervention, and now all 3 are on the same page, and they've come up with some really interesting ways to involve the workers on the ground that are actually doing the hard labor. And it's all because they involve the social scientists. So.
Great, good to hear. Yeah, the aspect of us, all of us in agriculture, internal, pull the rope in the same direction is important as well, and that's the social sciences aspect. So, thank you.
All right. This is the point in our agenda where I'm not sure the next speaker is here. In fact, I know he's not. He's driving and probably won't make it. So is Dr. David Ertl here? Wonderful. And then after this, we'll have an opportunity for any unscheduled speakers to come on up and say a few words or make a presentation.
Well, good morning, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this morning. I'm here representing the Iowa Corn Growers Association and the Iowa Corn Promotion Board, but really I'm here to discuss a top research priority of our corn farmer members and those who pay our corn checkoff. As Dr. Jeff Mullen mentioned this morning, next Friday represents the 20th anniversary of the signing of the legislation funding the National Plant Genome Initiative. This was a landmark legislation, and it's still functioning today in terms of generating genomic information. The corn growers across the country were instrumental in getting that legislation drafted and pushed through. And I give them a lot of credit for the foresight that our farmers have in understanding the importance when they heard about the human genome being sequenced, asking the question, why can't we do it in corn? And we did. And we've done it in a lot of other crops since. So it didn't stop there. Once the maize genome was sequenced in 2009, they immediately began asking, what's next? How do we take this book of alphabet letters and turn it into improvements on our farm? And in visiting with the public and private researchers, it became apparent that the next step was we need to generate field phenotype data and trait information to correlate with this genetic database. And so ever since the genome was sequenced, we began this next step in the journey of turning that genome information into functional genomic information. A tremendous investment has been made in genomic research, and we're now looking for additional research emphasis in the area of translating this into this functional information. So as we all know, the economic important traits in crops are the function of their genome and the environment in which it's placed, and those traits are expressed as a result of that genotype by environment interaction, resulting in the plant's phenome or collective assembly of its phenotypes. So understanding the role of these genes with their environment is going to allow researchers to better design and predict performance of plants even before they're created, and allowing us to make more rapid improvements in crop varieties and hybrids. As we face additional challenges from the environment, water availability, nutrient availability, and so on, genetics offers one bright spot of hope for improving our productivity and resisting these challenges and headwinds. So the research that we believe needs to happen is development of tools in the field, such as high throughput phenotyping sensors. And to go along with that, then we're going to need these tremendous databases to handle the large quantities of data generated. No longer are we just measuring A, C, T's, and G's in the genome alphabet. We're now collecting terabytes of data from very inexpensive cameras, videos, who knows what else, different formats of data that are very large and going to require a totally different way of thinking about databases. And then once we get those data sets assembled, we're going to need new tools to analyze those and interpret those to extract the important information from those. So this kind of research is no longer just going to be the realm of plant scientists. It's going to require bringing in disciplines such as computer science, engineering, climatology, crop modeling to fully leverage this information. And of course, I'd be remiss to not also mention the importance of training. This will provide a great training platform for our students of the future and scientists of the future to have the breadth needed to be successful in their fields. No longer can you just study physiology or plant breeding and be able to function in this new world. So I mentioned this is important to our corn growers, and I wanted to highlight that corn growers from across the country have invested more than $3 million of their own checkoff dollars in the last few years to initiate a maize phenotyping initiative called Genomes to Fields. And this has resulted in a wide-scale testing network of more than 20 universities and more than 30 scientists from the maize breeding and maize genetics communities coming together to generate phenotype data from thousands of genotypes across more than 100 environments so far. And this is just to kickstart this effort into generating phenotypic data to go along with all the rich maize genome data we have. But this is just a start. It's certainly not enough to fully leverage all that genomic information. And so we're requesting that NIFA look strongly into this area of generating the types of tools, data sets, skills necessary to leverage the genome information. So I'll just conclude by a little personal anecdote. I began working for the Iowa corn growers in 2011, which was just 2 years after the maize genome was sequenced. On the very first day on the job, Pam Johnson, who's a corn farmer from Iowa, Iowa Corn Board member, as well as former president of the National Corn Growers, came up to me and said, "What do I think about phenotyping?" And I'm telling you that because this is definitely a farmer-driven initiative. Those of us at the associations are pushing it forward, but it's through the drive and determination of the farmers themselves, and again, their foresight. To wrap up that story, I said, of course, phenotyping is very important, being a corn breeder myself, but I do want to emphasize that this is something very important to farmers themselves. And with that, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to present, and thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. Just a sort of a follow-up question on big data. Big data is a very broad term used in many different ways. So the first dimension I'd like to sort of get your insight on is when your producer, your grower is looking at this problem, they're looking at it as tools that they need to make sense out of what's going on in their fields to optimize their production, or are they looking at it as tools that the researchers need to really sort of help improve the pipeline opportunities for them? Then the second question is sort of related to that, which is what are the needs? Are the data tools needed generically, or are they needed specifically to translate to specific crops? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Where do you see the gaps?
All right, the first question, yeah, I probably should specify. There's both a need at the research level and at the farmer level for managing and analyzing big data. Those are somewhat separate issues, but there's actually some interest among university professors of obtaining farmer-created data as well to help build up our database of phenotype information. And I do believe that some of these tools that will be developed for research purposes will get translated to the field. Perhaps more in the sensor area. I can see some immediate applications to some of these research tools that we're developing being deployed relatively quickly on farmer implements to also measure those traits within the farmer fields. But definitely I see an issue both on the research side and the farmer side. Farmers are at the point where they can begin collecting big data on their own farm, but there really aren't very many good tools yet available. Second question.
More of a generic
Yeah, okay.
sense of the tools, or is it very specific use of?
Yeah, some of each. Some of these tools we believe, such as data analysis tools to dig into analyzing genotype by environment interaction, can go across crops. But certainly when you get into the crop modeling area, that's going to have to be more specifically developed. I think there'll probably be some generic modeling tools perhaps, but to translate it to a specific crop, quality of grapes is going to be a lot different than yield in corn, so we'll need some specific modeling tools at that level. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Next, we have Jason Ross. So NIFA is always listening throughout this period, so if you want to show up the day of and load up a PowerPoint, we're happy to hear you. Jason is from Iowa State University.
So I would also echo what many people have said, and that's thanks for the opportunity to share some of our perspectives and my perspective. I'm a faculty member at Iowa State University. I'm in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences and also in the Department of Animal Sciences. And in addition to that, I serve as the director of the Iowa Pork Industry Center, and in that role work closely with a lot of stakeholders and producer groups, including the Iowa Pork Producers Association, the National Pork Board, and just a lot of livestock producers throughout the state of Iowa and the Midwest. And so a little bit about the College of Ag and Life Sciences. These different bullet points here kind of recognize some of the highlights, some of the research thrust areas where we have really strengths in faculty programs. And so, you know, NIFA has long invested into our college and into our university and has helped support tremendously already faculty programs in teaching, research, and extension in these different areas. And so we have about 5,300 undergraduate students in the college. About 1,150 of those would be in the animal sciences. And so we have a large impact on training the next generation of innovators, the next generation of scientists that are going to not only have an impact on U.S. agriculture, but on global agriculture in general. And towards the bottom here, you can kind of see some of the other areas, big data, and within the big data is precision livestock farming, and just other areas that are beginning to become newer and innovative pushes in our faculty programs at Iowa State University. So when we look at grand challenges, they're not too far different than what things have been said in this room already. And looking at the global population in 2050, we know what the predictions are for the number of people that are going to be in the U.S. and globally. What we also know is that the arable land mass is not going to increase substantially in the U.S., or at least not proportional, or not in the world, and at least not proportional to the global growth. So that creates a significant food and nutrition security issue, and as you guys all probably know, food security is a major contributor to other acts of I guess just peace in different regions in the world. So it's very dependent upon food and nutrition security. So obviously also the impact on environment of production agriculture is a core to many of our faculty programs. The impact of agriculture on human health. You guys have probably seen a lot of the literature that comes out, and what I'll show you here in a little bit is just the importance of animal agriculture on human essential nutrient production and its role in the whole system, the whole agricultural system for food production in the world. And then obviously just energy is another major challenge that we'll have to face moving forward. And so a lot of that can be captured, at least in my mind, in sustainable intensification of agriculture, recognizing that everything that's been said here already with respect to improving efficiency, plant genetics, plant phenomics, and improving yields per acre of arable land is critical to feeding the world. And what I would also suggest to that is that animal agriculture is an integral part of producing enough essential human nutrients, protein, and other amino acids, vitamins, and minerals available to humans. So this is from a review paper, but obviously we know that there's a substantial part of the world that is food insecure. But kids in the U.S. are not immune to this as well. There's a significant number of children in the U.S. that are protein insecure. So there may be food, but they're protein insecure throughout the U.S., and it's exacerbated throughout the world. And that has significant impacts on growth and development, both from a neurological standpoint, but also from a physical standpoint as well. This is just a graph that I put in here that's created by Dr. Dale Bauman, who's from Cornell University, a retired faculty member that's in the National Academy. And this is a highlight from a talk I saw him give, looking at an index that calculates the production, nutrient density production, in relation to greenhouse gas emissions. And so what this says, and I should have tried to edit this out of here after the wine talk, so I apologize. And I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty if you drink a Mountain Dew or a beer later on the way home. Hopefully not the beer on the way home. But the point being is that the inclusion of animal agriculture and milk production in this scenario is that the product, the nutrient production per acre or per greenhouse gas emissions is substantially improved relation to other agricultural products. And so the point being is that animal agriculture is a critical component moving forward for the next 20, 30, 40 years, that we need to start looking at whole system agricultural production and how plant and animal production efficiencies can be intertwined to improve overall availability of food security and nutrition security for a growing global population. So again, this is just kind of the last slide where I've kind of summarized a couple things from the question of where should we be prioritizing research. I think we need to be prioritizing research in whole system agricultural approaches that maximize human essential nutrient production. And so in that approach, that recognizes that we need to maximize plant yields where we can maximize plant yields, but we also need to maximize human essential nutrient production through animal agriculture. And animal agriculture is an efficient mechanism to convert plant material into human essential nutrients more efficiently in many cases on a per acre basis. And so I think that's a critical component to adequately, efficiently, and sustainably feeding the world. To do that, there needs to be substantial research-based advancements. We've talked about research-based solutions in new areas, not only in plant agriculture or only in animal agriculture, but as they relate to each other and the impacts of environment on, and we just heard about the interactions between genes and the environment and plants and the implications of that. I would say to take that further and evaluate that, how does that impact the quality of that feed to influence a dairy cow's ability to produce milk and the quality of that milk, as well as a pig to produce bacon and pork chops. And so, and the nutrient components of that animal product. So, the other thing that's critical, and so there's a lot of things that go into that research-based advancement. Precision livestock farming. Precision farming has been generating great advancements in the last 10 or 20 years, but precision livestock farming is also something that will enable us to continue to have sustainable intensification, where we improve animal production while diluting the fixed prices or the fixed cost of animals by improving their efficiency. And part of that's through collecting substantial amounts of data and processing data that will enable monitoring of animal welfare, as well as monitoring just animal productivity in general and their interactions with the environments that they're in. So that covers a lot of different areas, from engineering to physiology to nutrient management. Also, we've heard it a few times today, just the development of future leaders in agriculture and research innovation. And there's only a few Norman Borlaugs that come through the world, and the next one may not be in this room. I'm pretty sure it's not me, So we need to continue to invest, as you already have, but continue to advance those investments into the development of future leaders. And so we have every 4 or 5 years about 5,000 undergraduate students come through the College of Agriculture And it's our hope and aspirations that those students are going to go on and be the innovators of the next solution to feeding the world. And so we need to continue to give those students those opportunities to get them into the research opportunities to help foster and develop their innovation. So collectively, that results in basic and applied sciences that translate to diluting the fixed effects or the fixed costs of agriculture through sustainable intensification. So production efficiency in livestock and in crops is how we dilute those fixed costs by maximizing our yields over the cost of maintenance in an animal and over the cost of an acre in plants. And so, oh, my apologies. Yeah. So, yeah, so there's a lot that goes into that, but that's really what I would advocate for, is just a larger system approach, recognizing with the goal in mind of maximizing our human essential nutrient production through crop and through plant and animal agriculture. So I guess I'll stop there and open it up to any thoughts, perspectives, questions. Sure.
Thank you for your presentation, and I think we're seeing a theme here. We need to, as we're increasing productivity, make sure that we're answering the questions at the end of the chain. Is it sustainable? Is it nutritious? Is it all of the rest? Do we have the next generation coming along? I was making a note, and I think almost every speaker has touched on the need to train the next generation. So this is great. This is really great, and you're really in line with what we're thinking. But you're adding a great dimension to it and giving us the perspective. So this is really great. Thank you for this presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Anyone else? Would anyone else like to add a comment today? All right. Oh, come on up. Wonderful. Good. Can't help yourself for one last thought. Well, there'll be some final thoughts, but
I'm an extension guy. I can't turn away a microphone. So I'm Dr. Doug Jardine, and I'm an extension plant pathologist with Kansas State University. And I'm actually here today because for the next several weeks, I'm the acting assistant director for ag programs. And Dr. Greg Hadley, my boss, sent me here today to listen and take notes. So he doesn't know I'm up here. But I would like to just say a few words about integrated pest management. One of my past jobs at Kansas State University is I was the state integrated pest management coordinator. And I think we all know that the public is hugely concerned about pesticides in their foods. Whether they're fungicides, insecticides, herbicide residues, glyphosate. There's lots of misinformation about some of these products out there. But a couple years ago, I had the chance to serve on the grant panel that distributes funds for integrated pest management programs across the country. And I can just tell you that there were way more great ideas than there were funds to supply them all. And that has become a competitive process. And so, you know, those states that wrote the best proposals got the best money, but that doesn't mean some of the states whose proposals weren't quite as good, some of their ideas were really probably deserving of funding. They just maybe didn't do a good a job at presenting them as some of the other states did. So I would think that an investment, increased investment perhaps in funding for the integrated pest management programs across the country would be a really good idea. Both in competitive research funds in integrated pest management as well as capacity funds that we've heard. I know one of the areas that some of my colleagues deal with are, and we've seen it in particularly the weed, is resistance from the pests we're trying to control. It's a huge problem with a number of different weeds. There is a number of insects that are resistant to many classes of compounds. I can tell you there's a very important disease of soybeans called frog-eye leaf spot. A field that has never seen a fungicide
after a single spray of a strobilurin fungicide, we can recover resistant isolates. The fungus is that adapted to overcoming resistance. So one of the ways that we can deal with resistance is with these diseases is through breeding, and certainly several people have mentioned breeding today. And the importance of breeding in the public sector, I think, is important. I was at a meeting within the last year, and there was an employee of a major seed company, and the discussion was around breeding for disease resistance. And the person said, well, you know, diseases are a once-in-a-while thing, but yield is an every-year thing. And so that particular company, their focus is entirely on increasing yields, and they really don't give very much thought to disease resistance. So if that's not happening in the private sector, maybe we need to do some funding in the public sector so that where profit isn't important, we can develop the germplasm with the resistance genes in it, and maybe unlink them from negative traits and then turn them over to the private companies for development. So I think that's kind of what I had in mind here today. So, but I would take a question. Okay.
If that is the end of our public comment, I know we have a few more comments from NIFA. Dr. Peter Johnson has some ideas for some summaries, and Dr. Qureshi will finish. To those of you that are viewing this online, there are 3 more opportunities to comment in public. Next week on Thursday, we'll be in Atlanta, Georgia. The following Thursday, November 2nd, we'll be in Sacramento, California. And on Wednesday, November 8th, we'll be in Greenbelt, Maryland. You can find more information on our website, www.usda.nifa.gov/NIFA listens.
Okay, this is ad lib, so we'll see how it goes, but I think it's going to be fun. And this is a concluding story for me about Fred and Mary. Now, the nice thing about Fred and Mary is that Fred and Mary have spent their life working in agriculture. And it's kind of hard to believe, but having heard those who came to the podium today and spoke about your different areas of interest, concern, and need, Fred and Mary were involved in many, if not all, of what we heard today. So now let's hear about Fred and Mary. It actually, and it's a happy story, but the way it starts out with, you might say, oh, this doesn't sound so happy. Fred and Mary, turns out they passed away. They actually died within a few days of each other. Okay, but don't worry, they both made it to heaven. So Fred and Mary arrive into heaven just about the same time. In fact, so close that they walk in together. And there's this beautiful angel that meets them and says, "Welcome to heaven, Fred and Mary. Wait until you see what we have prepared for you." So the angel brings them to this incredibly huge mansion. Now, mind you, Fred and Mary were involved in agriculture and they worked really, really hard. But they were never rich people. I mean, let's face it, if you want to make a lot of money, you don't necessarily work in agriculture. But Fred and Mary did it because it was their life passion. They raised their family on the farm. So here they are in heaven, and they arrive in this mansion, and the angel says, "Okay, this is yours. This is yours," and looks at what's inside. And it is better than the best-looking mansion you could imagine. There's living rooms with gold sofas, but they're comfortable. There's living rooms with silver chairs, but they're comfortable. There's bathrooms all over, because remember, they're elderly now. They've been married 60 years. And there's anything you want. So the angel says, okay, Fred, so I understand that when you were alive, you really liked wine, okay? You loved wine. Well, look out the back. You've got your own private winery, okay? And those grapes on the vine, you don't need mechanization to harvest them. The angels will harvest them for you. All you have to do is pick the bottle of wine that you want. Welcome to heaven. And then the angel says, and you also always love looking at your cornfield. Well, you look out that window. Look at that gorgeous, gorgeous cornfield. And once again, you had some beef cattle and you had some pigs. You don't have to harvest that corn. The angels will do it for you. Look out that window. You've got the beef, you've got the pigs, and Mary, you always wanted fresh eggs. Look out that window. You've got your chicken coop, and you never had chickens because your husband said he wasn't going to clean the coop. But this is heaven. Angels clean the coop. That's yours. You got fresh eggs every morning. Oh, look out that other window. You have a wheat field because Mary, you love making bread. And now you'll have your bread made from your wheat. And Fred, you don't have to do anything. Look out that other window. This is a huge mansion, like lots of windows, okay? Look out that window. There's a grain, what do we call those? Grain silos. No, but granary. There's a granary. So guess what? The angels do all that. You'll just have the fresh wheat from your wheat fields brought to you, and you can make all the bread you want. Oh, and don't forget the sorghum. Yeah, because you're going to feed some of that to your animals. Wow. So Mary's really, really happy. But Fred, interestingly, starts getting angry. At this point, by the way, the angel has left, says, I'll come back. You got more stuff coming. This is only the beginning. Just settle in. And Fred says to Mary, he says, Mary, I am so upset. Oh my God, I hope I woke you up if you were tired. I am really, really angry at you. So angry. Now Mary is taken aback because they've got their dream come true. And so Mary says, Fred, I've loved you for 60 years. You've never got this upset at me. Why are you angry at me now? And guess what he said? He says to her, Mary, if it hadn't been for your healthy food, I would have been up here years ago. Okay, so that's, I just tried to pull you all into the story in different ways. I know I couldn't pull all of you. And regardless, we do support healthy eating, okay? Because it's one thing to be in heaven, it's another thing to make heaven on earth. So we do want healthy eating. But thank you. I really had fun here and hope you did too.
So Dr. Johnson was able to bring human dimension into all this at the end of the session. Thank you, Peter. Well, thank you all for being so engaging since 8:30 this morning. The fact that you all showed up in person really made this session very successful in terms of the intent we had. We heard a lot about NIFA being your partner. that is important, but we think it is more important that you are NIFA's partners, and that's the value we wanted to derive out of today's morning session. Where do we go from here? But before I do that, what have we heard? We have heard a lot of excellent ideas. And I've been taking a lot of notes. We have also been recording all this, and we are 2 or 3 redundancy built into recording mechanisms so that we don't lose anything what we heard today. But we sort of heard about the science aspect of production agriculture. We heard about the extension aspect of production agriculture. We also heard about the human dimensions. We heard about education. We heard about the need to train farmers. We heard about the next generation of scientists. We heard about the value which we should and must derive out of all these enormous genome sequencing we have done over the years. How can we use this high throughput technology and the big data which is coming out, and how can we take this genome to phenome? We've heard about specialty crops. We heard about sustainable intensification of agriculture. We heard about engaging youth and positive youth development, precision farming, future leadership. We heard about partnerships, commodity boards who are here and have been supporting a lot of excellent research through partnership by actually putting in funding in partnership with NIFA. All of these things are extremely important. I think what we heard was surprisingly very aligned, like Dr. Eblin said, very aligned with NIFA's thinking as well, because these sessions which we are having now are after we've already had an internal listening sessions. There also this nexus between social and biophysical sciences came up very loud and clear, that we must not forget the human dimension or social sciences aspect of food, agriculture, natural resources, as well as the human sciences themselves in NIFA's portfolios and agenda. So we are going to go around the country, and all these ideas which would be brought forward, we will, and I assure you on behalf of NIFA's leadership, we will review all of these comments. We would analyze all of these comments and see what themes evolve out of all of this input which we are receiving. We expect to use not only our own reading skills and understanding skills, but also there are a lot of technologies available. We might even use some digital technologies, for example, like topic modeling, which would help us pick some of the overarching themes which are coming out of these discussions and conversations. At the end of the day, we certainly hope that these conversations would inform NIFA in bridging the programmatic gaps which we might have currently in our portfolio. Also starting some newer programs which might come out of these conversations. But more importantly, these conversations would inform our future funding priority, our budget process. There are very discrete mechanisms NIFA uses to fund our programs. We heard a lot that we need more funding. Absolutely, that's something which NIFA constantly is very aware of. We also heard loud and clear that capacity funding really is the foundation, or bedrock was the term used, to have the infrastructure which would lead us towards these next generation innovation and all. So we will pay attention to that. We heard about education, development of next generation of scientists. NIFA currently have a lot of excellent education programs, almost pipeline or pathways approach. We will certainly look into those and see how we can enhance NIFA's efforts in developing future scientists, but also providing some experiential learning. Daryl, for example, brought up a very good point earlier that experiential learning is also as important as scientific learning, so hands-on training and all. So we would certainly look into those things as well. So I think at this point, I want to thank all of you. Truly, thank you for coming out and talking to us and presenting your ideas. We value your input tremendously, and together I have no doubts that we will make the difference in the lives of people of this great country. So thank you so much. Looking forward to our continuing interaction. Your feedback in some shape or form will be analyzed and either posted on our website or communicated back to you in some shape or form. I don't know what at this point, but we will certainly come up with some mechanism so that in future we can remain engaged. This must not stop here. I think we will certainly continue this interaction and feedback loop. So thank you so much, and have safe travels back home, and let other colleagues know, those who have not been able to participate today, that as Megan said, there are online opportunities still available for feedback. So thank you so much.